Welcome to your first lecture of environmental geography. I hope you guys are doing well, staying safe, and I hope your first week of fall semester was wonderful given the circumstances. This is how we're going to be seeing each other. So today we are going to be going through Chapter 1. Chapter 1 is a pretty short lecture. Okay, it's just really introducing the idea of environmental science and the idea of sustainability. So sustainability, we will see the entire semester, and you guys probably know what the definition is. And we already did talk about consumption and the idea of overuse of natural resources, right? And using energy and those natural resources to create our stuff. And everything is out of our field of vision. So going forward with that idea, let's get started with chapter 1 of our semester. So this would be more, this slide is more for in the classroom, but it's just what we're going to be going over today. Usually these lectures are like a 2-day lecture, but I go through it pretty quickly because we don't really stop for discussion or questions or things like that. So we're going to look at human impact on the environment. Again, we have talked about this. We've discussed this the first week of classes. So you're going to be pretty familiar with this once you're watching this lecture. We're going to be looking at population, defining natural resources. Even if we have already kind of talked about them, we're going to be specifically defining them. Habitat destruction. We talked about the story of stuff, so this is from last semester. And don't worry about the homework assignments or journals. Unfortunately, that is something that we can't do when we're doing distance learning. All right. So again, I'm kind of just also, it's a learning process for me. So let's just get started. So when we look at our impact as humans on the environment, if you're in this class, you probably can agree and argue and say that we have had a negative impact. And I saw some of your discussions that proved a good point that it could also be positive, right? I don't want you guys to think that I'm like anti-human and we suck as a population. That's not it, but we also cannot ignore the problems that come along with it. Really, our large population is two things. It's a sign that technology and medical advances, we're getting much better as a species, right? Obviously, but at the same time, you're going to see that the amount of people on the planet, the population growth is really the driver of most of the environmental issues that we talk about in this class. Okay, unfortunately, most of those environmental issues have to do with our resources, and those resources are really threatened, and it's because of how many people there are, and can we use those in a way that we're thinking of future generations. So the human impact on the environment. Our planet is suited for life. Look at this beautiful picture of our Earth. I mean, obviously, I love the planet. I got a degree in this. I teach this, right? But I hope I can kind of give you guys this, and the takeaway is that we have this beautiful, amazing planet, right? We're called to be good stewards of this earth, right? Whether it's using your reusable bags, shutting off the lights, whatever it is, it all amounts to your impact, right? Earth is suited for life. We have water. Our temperature is perfect. The insulation from the sun, we're in the perfect spot in terms of proximity to the sun, right? We rotate around the sun 365.25 days, right? The atmosphere is suited for life. All these gases that make our air breathable. Also, the sunlight gives us photosynthesis, gives us all this vegetation, food, mountains, land, lakes. All these that I named are some of our many natural resources the Earth provides. Our Earth is also known as the blue planet. So far, we think that it is the only planet in the solar system with water. However, there has been some type of notion that there may be some frozen water on other planets, which will be interesting to see. A couple years ago when I gave this lecture, I said if there's frozen water, then there could be life on other planets, but now it is a known fact that life exists outside of Earth. Isn't that wild? That is wild to me. So several million different species inhabit the planet. The human species is the most significant agent of environmental change. Human activities are disrupting global systems. What type of global systems? Atmospheric systems, right? Land systems, biological systems, rainforests, ecosystems. So our activities, whether we like it or not, or whether we have a choice or not, are disrupting these systems. Now, the key going forward in the future is how to sustain our population, but be mindful of our global systems, right? Be mindful of the environment, be mindful of these natural resources, and how we can do that, and doing that, thinking of natural resources and future generations, that is building and moving forward sustainably. Increasing human numbers. Well, we're looking at our population in this chapter, really, because again, population is the driver of most of our environmental issues, okay? Our population has surpassed 7 billion in 2011. Too many people, not enough resources, right? There's just not enough water. Is there enough water for everyone? No, and living in California, we know that water is a precious and limited natural resource, right? Now think of all the other dry areas on Earth. So our distribution of water is uneven. You have places like Canada that has plenty of fresh, natural water, fresh water, but it's already too much. So how can we distribute that evenly? So, you know, the distribution of fresh water is not even, right? Yes, we have a lot of water in the ocean, but that is not the solution. So a lot of people say, hey, why don't we just take water from the ocean, desalinize it, and there you go. Well, there's a lot of issues behind that too. So too many people, not enough resources. Population is the driver of all environmental problems, okay? Not the only driver, but the main reason. So I want you guys to realize, yes, I've repeated that since I started the lecture today. And if I repeat something, it probably means that you guys should write that down, right? Population is the driver of all environmental problems. I mean, think of 7 billion. We're going to hit 8 billion in our lifetime. You're looking at a place like India. Just the subcontinent of India has 1.3 billion people. Mexico City, 8.9 million people. So right now we're at or around 7.7, 7.8 billion people on the planet. And that's just, it's going and going, right? Demographers predict that the world population will stabilize by the end of the 21st century. Despite family planning efforts in many countries, population growth rates do not change quickly. Several billion people will be added to the world in the 21st century. Can Earth support so many people? Can Earth support enough food resources for so many people? So that is the main question. Think about how we eat here in the United States. What is our staple diet? A lot of animal protein, right? A lot. So here in the United States, okay, we can support that lifestyle, but think of the third world countries that are moving forward. They're kind of like moving up to being able to provide their country with animal protein for everyone. Is there enough space to grow that livestock, to grow food for that livestock? So it's not just the cow, it's also how much corn, how much water, how much space that cow needs, right? So that's the footprint attached to whatever it is you eat. And hopefully in this class, by the end of the semester, you'll realize that your diet, your personal diet, what you eat, what you, if you're vegetarian, pescatarian, whatever it is, has a huge impact on the environment. The more red meat you eat, the bigger impact on the environment, the bigger your ecological footprint is. I stopped eating red meat, I think it's going to be 10 years now. I don't eat beef. I do eat cheese. I love cheese. But I don't eat beef specifically for environmental reasons. So I eat a lot of chicken, turkey, fish, just white fish because I don't like seafood. But that is mainly for environmental reasons. This is just kind of silly when we talk about this in the class. You know, my choice is not to have children. I am child-free by choice. I'm not against children. I love kids. But I tell a lot of people, save the earth, don't give birth. This is just being very silly, guys. I'm not against people who have children. If you have kids, that's beautiful. That's awesome. I think it's a beautiful step in life. But me personally, I'm going to save the earth and not give birth. Development, environment, and sustainability. As demographers differentiate countries as either highly developed, moderately developed, or less developed. A highly developed country, an example of that would be the United States, Canada, Japan, most of Europe. This is based mainly on total wealth of country. And less developed countries are places like Kenya, Bangladesh, Nicaragua. There is less labor or less skilled labor abundant. Recently, we have seen an increase in wealth from many urban residents in previously less developed countries like China, India, Brazil, and Mexico. So just keep in mind when we talk about highly developed countries, we're talking about Canada, United States, Japan, most of Europe. And this is important going forward because we're going to see that highly developed countries, their impact on the planet is greater than moderately or less developed countries. And these countries that are moving up, moving forward, and kind of going through these growing pains and becoming a more developed country, it's going to put more pressure on our natural resources. Population, resources, and the environment. The relationship between population use of resources and the environment is very complex. The resources needed to survive is small, but hold on, give me a second. All right, I got my thoughts together. So the relationship between population, the use of resources, and environment is complex. Yeah, we can say the more people, the more use of resources, right? But it's not that easy. It's very complex. The resources needed to survive is small, but there's a high population, right? And this is less developed countries. They don't need much to survive, but there's a high population. Highly developed countries, their individual resource demand is greater than what is needed to survive. Think of us here in the United States. We build much larger than we need. We buy much more than we need. Think of all these big box shops. Think of Costco. Is there really everybody going to Costco has 12 people in their family? No, right? I mean, it's just me and my husband, and I still go to Costco and we're buying like shitload of food. But it's just that, well, I try not to buy that much. But what I'm saying is it's this idea that we need more to survive than we really do, right? Think of all our extra stuff we have that we think we need. We really don't. So in highly developed countries, our individual resource demand is higher than what we really need to survive. Do we really need these large cars? Do we really need these large homes for 2 people? Do we really need as much clothes as we probably have in our closet? Do we really need, do you know what I'm saying? All these things that we think we need, and we really don't. Environmental degradation is an important topic, an important term. When we look at resource demand, when we look at countries and their amount of population and how they use those resources. Environmental degradation, this is the actual definition, the deterioration of environment through depletion of resources, destruction of ecosystems, and extinction of wildlife. So go ahead and pause it here. I would write down this term. This is on your exam. Okay, let's look at natural resources. So when we talk about natural resources, hopefully you guys kind of have an idea when I'm using that term what resources are. Here is a great slide that kind of breaks it down. Resources can be renewable or non-renewable. Renewable means that there is an infinite amount. You can overuse it and you can never exhaust these resources. They never disappear, right? Energy from the sun, that is a renewable resource. Air, wind, water, hydropower, soil, plants. You can kind of argue that one, but it technically is a renewable resource. Non-renewable resources are things like fossil fuels, oil, coal, gas, petroleum, minerals, copper, iron, right? So these would be non-renewable resources. They might renew, but the amount of time it takes for that reservoir to fill up with oil or petroleum or gas is much longer than like our lifetime. So we're using it much too fast, right? Non-renewable resources are presented in limited quantities and are depleted by use. Renewable natural resources, nature replaces these resources quickly. Things like trees, fish, fertile soil, fresh water. And I get a lot of people that say, well, trees, we are overusing them. Yeah, but if we were to use it at a smart rate, for lack of a better word, they technically are supposed to grow, right? But you can argue and say we are using trees in a way that they are not replenishing quickly enough. Does that make sense? Same thing for fish. It's a renewable natural resource. Now, when we talk about food resources in aquatic systems and aquaculture, you're going to see how our fishing industry it's going to be possible that we're going to have fishless oceans in our lifetime because we are overfishing. And the amount of people that are relying on protein from the ocean is far too great than we ever thought would present itself. Rapid population growth can cause overexploitation of these. So that would be overexploitation of these renewable resources. Here is a great picture of deforestation, not a great picture that it's beautiful, but a great example of what deforestation looks like. Habitat destruction and wildlife impact. So habitats are an essential resource. Again, this chapter is really just kind of an overview. It's just really introducing you the idea of environmental science and environmental degradation and sustainability. Habitats are an essential resource. Unfortunately, habitats are becoming smaller. Habitats in rainforest, the tundra, the prairie, our Mediterranean chaparral, all these places provide habitats for very important plant life and also animal life, wildlife. Habitat degradation is the process of human origin that make habitats less suitable and less available for animals. And then resource consumption. Now that we covered these natural resources, how are we using these resources? Yes, we're purchasing them, right? Like this can, right? But it also took energy to create this can, right? So it's the use of materials and energy to create this, right? And then we consume it. And like we saw in that video, we don't see the creation or the use of energy to create this product. All we see and all we really feel is that joy in the purchasing action. It really is kind of like this sacred thing that we've created in the United States. We're based on capitalism. We're based on consumption, on consumerism. There is nothing more sacred than shopping. I mean, that might be a little over, right? I'm kind of going overboard, but it's really kind of like this this American tradition, right? Think of, I mean, I don't know what else to say. I think you I think you guys kind of get the idea, right? I kind of lost my train of thought, but yes, consumption. Our identity is based on consumerism. What have you bought recently that contributes to that golden arrow, which was consumption, right? How often are you contributing to that golden arrow? What are you driving? What are you wearing? What are you eating? What's on your face? All these things, how it shows if you can contribute to consumption or not, right? It's not about, oh, wow, you're a teacher, you're a mother, you're a sister. What you do for society, it's how you consume in this culture, right? In this shopping culture, this fast fashion culture, okay? So the story of stuff, I hope you guys took some time and wrote down some notes when you watched that video. And if you didn't, go ahead and pause it, and this would be a great time to write this down. Unsustainable consumption. So we looked at consumption already. Would you say that we're consuming sustainably? Well, what does sustainable mean? It means, are we consuming in a way that there's going to be enough energy and resources for future generations? Sustainability is using resources in a way that there is enough for future generations. What do you guys think? Think about this. This is probably going to be a discussion question in your module for this week. Are we consuming sustainably? No, we are not consuming sustainably. We are not thinking of future generations. And when I say we, I don't mean you or I or whoever is in this class. I mean we as a country, right? People who are in charge of the production. Are they thinking sustainably? No, and yeah, there are some amazing companies that are eco-conscious, that are thinking sustainably, and you know what? That's a movement in the right direction, which is great. But overall, this country is not consuming sustainably, and we are really putting a hole in the planet's natural resources. We, as more developed countries, because we are the ones that need more, we buy more, we build bigger, and we expect our life to be something much more than we need, right? And then what's next? So countries like India, right? Countries like the poor of India, the poor of China, the poor of Africa, they will be now moving forward looking for a life like Western culture, right? They kind of want to go live that lifestyle because it's what they've been fed, the American lifestyle. And the American lifestyle, unfortunately, is not sustainable. So they're going to want that access to fast fashion, access to build bigger cars. And it's not going to be like they're going to be using solar power or renewable energy. It'll be through very, very cheap forms of energy. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. The IPAT model. It shows how population, affluence, and technology interact to create an impact on our environment. So I would be the end result. So you take population, affluence, and technology, you multiply those three, and it would be your environmental impact. Obviously, further factors can be added to this equation. Ecological footprint, we'll talk about that, and you will have an activity related to your ecological footprint. This was coined, and kind of this concept was developed by Mathis Wackernagel and William Rees. So what it's saying that every person has an ecological footprint. So whatever it is that you, from the beginning of the day, when you turn on that faucet, to the amount of energy you use in your home, to what you eat, what you drive, where you go, how far you go in a day, where your food comes from, if it comes locally or if it's not local. All that at the very end creates your personal ecological footprint, because you have a water footprint, you have an energy footprint. All this comes together and we call it an ecological footprint. And diet is a huge source of that. Transportation is also as well, because when you think of what you're eating, that piece of beef, how much water did it take for the grass that the cow eats to grow? A lot. How much space did it take to grow that corn or grass to feed that cow? A lot. And now how much water is that cow drinking a day? A lot. Now when you butchered that cow, how much water did that take? How much energy was released into the atmosphere by butchering that cow or killing that cow and then turning it into your steak? And now that steak, on how many boat rides or truck rides or plane rides did it take to get to your plate? And once it got to your plate, how much emissions was further down that line, right? All that is accounted into your piece of beef, into your hamburger, into your steak, into your fish, whatever it is you're eating. Yes, if you're a vegetarian, your ecological footprint is almost nothing compared to someone who eats animal protein. The more and more various animal proteins you eat, the larger animal you eat, the higher your ecological footprint will be, okay? So you guys, there is this really cool website and you can go through it yourselves. I will have the link on it on your module. And your daily actions, it will tell you, if everybody lived like you, we would need this much or this big of a planet. Okay, this is something really important to think about. Here we go. Here's that term that we are moving towards, is sustainability. Here is the definition. It is the ability to meet human, economic, and social needs, our needs, without compromising the ability of our environment to support future generations. Now, this can be applied at many levels. At your personal level, your home, your neighborhood level, your local level, your community level, your state level, your country level. Like, it can be applied at many levels. Are buildings sustainable? A lot of them are becoming more sustainable. Is your community sustainable? Is our country sustainable, right? So we can look at it at many different levels. This is a great slide for you to pause here and write down the definition for this. Why is our society not operating sustainably? For one, we extract too many non-renewable resources. So those resources will never come back, right? We consume renewable ones too quickly, like fish and trees. Even if they're supposed to come back, we're just consuming them at a rate that they will never ever catch up with our demand. Does that make sense? We pollute the environment with toxins, right? We don't know what this shirt took down the line, how many chemicals were released into the air, how many boat rides it took to get to the store that I bought it at, how many airplane rides it took, right? We pollute the environment with toxins. Population continues to grow despite our Earth's finite ability to feed us. And I mean, this sounds silly, but I think we've already moved on to plan B, which is Mars, right? There's already people signed up to go and take trips back and forth to Mars. It sounds so crazy, right? But it is happening. So I think that before we invest so much, and I think space exploration is really important, but we still don't even know what's in our ocean. There are so many places in our ocean that we are still discovering and finding new species every day. So I think all the sciences in every field, it's very important to invest money into the science. I mean, think about today. We can't even develop a vaccine quickly enough, or our tests for this virus, some are giving us false positives and false negatives. Like, it's 2020. We should have invested more money into the medical and science field, right? It's kind of crazy. if you think about it. All right, I digress on that. Global plans for environmental science. So sustainable development, achieving an improved living conditions for all people while maintaining a healthy environment in which natural resources are not overused. And then I think India's biomass. I'm going to have the video link to this, I think. I'm going to figure out how to do this. But what is happening in India is, again, you have 1.5 billion people in India. You have about 700 million people who are still without electricity. Okay, they use biomass to cook. Now, what? My dog's barking because the mailman's here. Choo-choo, who did it? Choo-choo, come. Choo-choo. My dog barks at the mailman. It's really funny. Go get him, boy. Go get him. Yeah. So in India, you have about 700. Ooh. You have 700 million people cooking with biomass. So they take cow dung or cow poop, and they turn it into these little uplas here. It sounds gross, but it's just like charcoal. That's all it is. And they're able to light it and burn it, and that's how they cook their food. Okay, it's not that gross, guys. Don't be like weirded out. Well, those people are gonna move on, right? That's just the natural stage. They're not gonna be cooking with that their entire lifespan. So the next step would be coal. And you know, you have people from United States coming in and saying, oh, well, all these people should be moving on and using solar energy instead. Really? Like, that's really easy for us to tell the poor of other countries, like, well, you guys should move on to solar power while we're still burning fossil fuels. Does that make sense? We, as the United States, as the example of the world, can't tell the poor to move on and skip our growing pains when we can't even prove or set an example that we're moving on to fossil fuel free country. We are a fossil fuel addicted country, right? Compared to everyone else, we're building much bigger. We need much more to live, right? We need to heat these homes and cool these homes, and these homes are twice the size what they were 20 years ago. So it's really not terrible, but it's unfair for us to ask the poor of other countries to move on to this clean energy if we're not moving on. We're still using oil. Boy, did you get it, boy? So it's really unfair for us to do that. And I think I'm going to be able to put a clip from a documentary called Before the Flood, where they really highlight that and they talk about India specifically. And now all these people that are going to be moving on to coal, it's a dirty fossil fuel, but it's cheap. That's why they're moving on to that. It's a cheap fossil fuel. It's a cheaper way to light their homes. And all that coal will be released into the atmosphere, right? And so now think of 700 million homes now using coal as a source of energy. Now, what will all those fossil fuels do in the atmosphere? They keep the solar radiation in the lower portion of the atmosphere, and it increases warming. More glaciers will begin to melt. Our sea levels will continue to rise. So that's really getting more into the greenhouse effect, but really why fossil fuels are so terrible for the environment. The burning of fossil fuels, the amount of fossil fuels that we're burning. There are some, examples of sustainable buildings like green roofs. This is a roof covered with vegetation. There are some pictures here, green roof examples. All right, so let's talk about environmental science as a discipline. This is a study of humanity's relationship with other organisms and the living and non-living physical environment. Okay, it encompasses many interconnected issues: ethics, ecology, political science, politics, engineering. So it's a very broad discipline. My undergrad degree was a geography, environmental science route. So I took, it's very much related. I think you would probably, if you're an environmental science major, you'd probably be taking the same courses I did as a geography major. I think that's it for today, guys. Today's lecture is very small. It's very short, sorry. Let me know what you guys think about these lectures, what I could do to make them a little bit better. Other than that, don't worry about the slide. This is from past semesters. Just continue on with your module, okay? And hopefully you guys are taking notes while I am speaking. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week, hopefully on a Zoom call, if not this week, next week. Take care, stay healthy, and email me with any questions.